Welcome to the Floor and Order Time Chat. Today, I'm joined by Neville Starick, a performance and prosperity strategist based in Mildura, Victoria. Neville teaches professionals and business owners how to build self-awareness so they can shape and enjoy their own version of a high-quality life. He speaks to business groups every week about well-being and what it truly means to live with prosperity. Neville's time-related topic that he's passionate about is the fascinating link between stress and time perception. So how the way that we feel directly impacts the way that we experience time. So welcome, Neville.
Thanks very much, Christie. It's great to be here.
So wonderful to have you here. So let's begin. What drew you to exploring the connection between stress and our experience of time? Can you share what sparked your interest in that?
I guess it's been the experience across my life of actually noticing that there are times when time seems to speed up, and there are moments where time seems to really drag. And I've always been a little bit intrigued by this. I mean, I don't know, maybe your story was a bit like this, where you'd go on long road trips with family when you were a kid, and it would be like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And of course, the road trip seems to drag on the more you ask that question. But it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, we've had enough of this, and it's like, let's make things move along. But then if you find yourself doing things like playing a little game, or listening to music, or singing along with the radio, or something like that, and suddenly you realize that like 45 minutes has gone by and it doesn't feel like much time has gone by at all. And it's just like, well, okay, what goes on with that? Why do we have such differing experiences of time? And what are the influences that actually make a difference in how we experience time?
Yes, and those the memories of car trips and things that do take forever, it feels like, especially at that age. I know a little bit about the background of why it is that things take or feel much longer when you're a child compared to our ages now. Did you want to tell everyone a bit about that?
I guess some of it is just about, there's so many new experiences that are going on as a child that it's like you kind of, time doesn't really have, like, when we're young, we don't actually have this really clear sense of like how long something is or how long something will take. So it's like there's almost like there's an immediacy about, okay, this is happening and let's get to the end as fast as possible, because I don't know what the end looks like, and I don't know what's coming on here, what's happening here. So it's just like this whole sense of like, we've started something, surely we must be finished by now. No, is it now? Is it now? Is it now? And you're kind of learning how long things take. And as adults, I think we've had a lifetime of experience of actually recognizing how long things take. But I think our impatience gets in the way sometimes as adults, where it's just like, well, I know that it should take this long, but can I shave off some time? Or why is this taking a little bit of extra time than it usually does? And then we have that comparison to go back to, whereas as a child we don't.
Yes, I remember reading somewhere it was like, well, to a 10-year-old, 1 year is 10% of their life, whereas for a 50-year-old, it's only 2% of your life. So it's that that relation of how long you've been around as long as
Yes.
why time feels different.
Yep.
But in terms of stress, how does that show up with the people you're working with now and the perception of time?
Well, one of the things that happens with stress, one of several things that happens with stress, is that it sits there and it puts you in a fight or flight, fawn or freeze type of mode. There's sort of high energy responses and low energy responses. And both of those things have an effect on how you perceive time going on. When you're having a high energy response, when it's a fight, if it's flight, or I'm sitting there trying to appease somebody around me, you're on high alert. So your adrenaline's kicked in, you've got a whole bunch of chemical processes that are going on within your body that are stimulating your body to do a whole bunch of things. So muscles are tight, your breathing often gets shallower, and those are the physical responses. But one of the mental responses is that you become extremely focused, and you become like, this is what I'm focusing on right now. And it can feel like in that extremely focused space, that time is moving either extremely quickly or extremely slowly, depending upon what's going on. I mean, we watch the movies there where they sit there and put it on slow motion, and it's just like everything seems to be moving at this kind of a pace. But the reality is that you're actually moving a lot faster than it feels.
Mm-hmm.
To be like, oh, I've got time to observe all of these minute details when I'm highly stressed, because our bodies get set up to actually do that kind of focus and to pay attention to details that we might ordinarily miss. So that high energy response is generally it could feel like time is going really quickly, but it could also feel like time is going very slowly because you're packing so much more into it, or you're much more aware of all of the things that are happening. And so it feels like, for the number of things that I'm doing, this should be taking hours, but actually it's only taking minutes.
Yeah.
The low energy response is the what's it called? The faint response. And with that response, you're basically looking at a situation that is so stressful that you feel like you just can't do anything with it. So you can't fight it, you can't run away from it, you can't appease anybody. You just have to sort of fall in a heap and play dead, essentially. Now, that could be like zoning out, that could be dissociating, that could be quite literally fainting. But it's just like the whole purpose of that faint response is to protect yourself. You're hoping that whatever it is that is causing the overwhelming stress will pass you by, because you're almost like you're not there. So, and in those instances, the mental impact of being in that state is very much about I'm tuning out. And so you may have a perception that no time has gone by at all, but actually it could have been a very long period of time that's gone by where you've just been zoned out and just not been present with whatever it is that's going on. And
is that like dissociation?
Dissociation it's certainly, yes, it's an extreme form of dissociation. Now, everybody dissociates to some degree for various reasons of time. I mean, you sit there and you do go on autopilot when you're driving home because you're really familiar with the route home and you don't pay any attention. That's a form of dissociation that everybody does. Okay, but when you're in a very, very stressful situation, that dissociation can sometimes go to another level where it's just like I completely zone out to the point where my body goes back to just the very basic functions. Like I'll breathe and I might not even digest, but I will breathe and my heart rate will keep going, but the rest of me will just go floppy. And I'm just looking as innocuous and as non-threatening as possible, so that whatever it is that I'm dealing with will ignore me. Like I'm trying to become invisible.
Yes, because a few examples come to mind of like this topic that I've read is that so a car crash or something, our brain goes really, really slow because it's taking many, many images so that it remembers, like, oh, just in case this happens again, we need to be prepared. And it's, you know, unless you're very unlucky, it's something that hasn't happened very often. So you're like, this is new, I need to remember this. Which I think would be that high energy response that you talk about.
It could flip between a couple of things depending upon what happens. I mean, just as you're talking, I have a recollection of a car accident that I was involved in, where I was driving along and was passing the school bus and on the other side of the road, and there was a car park on the other side of the school bus. And I don't know what alerted me to the possibility that something might be going on here, but I sort of saw the bus and I thought, that's kind of strange the way it was sitting. And I slowed down and somebody came out of the car park entrance right across in front of me, swinging around in the opposite direction. I slammed on the brakes, but couldn't avoid a collision.
Mm.
And so the front of my car got hit. Now, it was interesting for me because it was like that was a split-second type of event. It was just kind of, it was very quick. It kind of, there wasn't really any time to respond. And I was sitting there with some co-workers in the car. We'd been out for lunch, and some co-workers in the car would have been hit, and they would have been directly hit if we had been just a few feet further ahead. And so it's just like the potential was just crazy of what could have happened. And my mind went there, and I kind of tuned out of what was going on in the situation. We had ambulances coming, checking and making sure that we were okay. And it's like, actually, I'm feeling quite okay. But I would just notice that I just went completely internally. My co-workers went crazy. They were just like, they were talking and carrying on and sort of very, very, very heightened in there, like wanting to like fight and sort of, it's like, and that it was just interesting just watching the responses, because I mean, I was the driver and I was very, very, on the surface, it appeared that I was very calm, but was actually in this moment of just almost shutting down. And it was like, I didn't quite know how I felt. I didn't really think that I was injured, but I wasn't sure. And people were firing questions at me to try and work out what was going on. I was just like, I'm not really quite sure how to respond. And but yes, but then my co-workers are just like a completely different response. And so yeah, they were. Yeah, it was very, very interesting seeing how the stress affected each of us quite differently.
Yes, because then I was thinking that the low energy that you mentioned, that fall in a heap, it's like that, you know, if something really terrible happens in front of you, and someone else is doing it to someone else, or like you're grabbing a handbag or something like that, and then afterwards you're asked and you say, oh, it just happened all so quickly. Like, I think it was, and when you were saying your examples, I was like, oh, it is that sort of, the fawn flight or then how the example in front of you can really trigger the different stress releases, stress responses. And I mean, stress responses, we often have a default that we go to when we're under stress. So it's like some people you'll find that like they'll get highly stressed and they'll be irritable and angry and ready to pick a fight over anything. And that doesn't have to be related at all to what their stress is about, but they're just very, very short-tempered, and very, very small triggers that will just set them right off. And other people will be like, oh, I'm going to retreat. I'm going to completely disappear, whether that be literally disappear, or they will almost mentally check out, and emotionally check out, and they'll zone out. And then some people, it's like, well, because of whatever experience that I've gone through, I just learned that I need to do the fawn response. And then some people are just like, I just get overwhelmed, I just fall in a heap, and completely. And the faint response isn't the same as the freeze, freeze response. The freeze response actually very high energy. So because what's happening in the freeze response is that you're sitting there with, I can't work out what I need to do. Should I fight this thing or should I run away? And it's like that deer in headlights type of thing. It's like, and I'm poised to do either, but I don't know which way to go. So all the energy is all there, but it's not clear what direction that energy needs to be taken to be able to respond to the situation in front. So I mean, deer in headlights thing, as I mentioned, it's just like there's a light coming toward me. Is this something that I can fight, or is this something that I should avoid? And I cannot work out which is the better response. It's very true. And so when in your work, are you helping people identify these different stresses, or
what I'm doing with a lot of people that are coming through is they're coming in highly stressed already, and a lot of them recognize that they're highly stressed. So and some of them are coming in quite worried about the stress symptoms that they're experiencing. So it's like they're noticing something unusual about their experience of stress, and they're wanting to stop those particular symptoms from showing up.
Mm.
And so a lot of what I'm doing is not so much about helping them to identify what the stresses are, because often they know. Sometimes they don't, but often they know what's going on. But it's helping them to understand what their responses mean, because we often assign, particularly if it's something that's unusual or uncomfortable, we often assign negative things to ourselves as a result of that. So I'm feeling something that I'm not used to feeling. It doesn't feel very nice. Something must be wrong with me.
Mm.
When the reality is that, considering the situation that they're in, the responses that they're experiencing are reasonably normal, and helping people to make sense of that, and then to work out like, how, like, part of it is about how long they've been experiencing the symptoms, whatever the symptoms might be. But then what do we need to do with that? Is it appropriate to sit there and try and bring those symptoms down, or are they still necessary? Because if people are in an ongoing situation, the stress levels are going to be high for a while to be able to stay, to be able to protect themselves. And I think that's one of the things that stress gets a bad name, because it's like, it feels bad, and it does have long term. It has negative effects on the body and the mind and all that kind of stuff. But in the short term, it's actually a really useful strategy that the body has in place to keep you safe. And if we're looking at stress, particularly around like, this is a safety response rather than I just feel awful, it can change how you work with it. So it's like, I'm feeling unsafe. So if I'm feeling unsafe, what is going to help me to feel safer? Which could be, I need to remove myself from a particular situation, or it could mean that I need to go and confront somebody, which is scary and causes some stress in its own right, to be able to get some support, or to be able to alert them to the fact that this is creating a lack of safety for me. And how can we work together, and sort of recruiting some support to be able to create the safety that is necessary. But that takes a fair amount of self-awareness to be able to recognize what's going on and where the safety issue is coming from. Because, I mean, some people are coming in, they've had traumatic events or some very difficult life circumstances earlier on that have actually conditioned them to respond to stress in particular ways. And those methods that were used in the traumatic situation, or in the earlier situation that was ongoing, may not actually be useful in the present anymore, but that's all they know.
And oh, sorry.
Yeah. So it's just, and they're actually responding out of a past event rather than out of what's going on in the present. And one of the big clues for that is that the amount of energy, or the response, seems out of proportion to the specific event that's happening in the present.
And on that piece about self-awareness, how do people actually build on that, or what little habits or go-to questions would you give someone to help build that?
What I've found quite useful is partly looking at things like some of the personality assessments. While they have limitations, they can actually open up a window of helping people to understand themselves. So it's things like, I often use the Myers-Briggs temperament type indicator. I use their different scales to be able to get people to think about, like, how do they work. I mean, this whole thing of introversion and extroversion, that's one of the scales in the Myers-Briggs thing, and most people think that's about how social somebody is, which in popular perception, that's what it is. But in the Myers-Briggs, they're actually defining it in terms of, where do you get your energy from, and how do you prefer to process things. So extroverts are very much about putting things out into the environment and about receiving energy from outside of themselves. and the stimulation that they get from outside helps them to process what's going on in their heads, and then also it energizes them. Whereas introverts, they get their energy from within in their own internal world. So they go away and they prefer quiet. They prefer opportunities to get away from stimulation, so that they can process, so that they can work out what they think, so that they can manage their own situation, and then they can regain energy. So if you're looking at just even in those two things there, it's like you can see that there are going to be situations that for somebody who has an introvert preference, there's going to be extremely stressful. So if someone with an introvert preference is in a situation where they're constantly having to make snap judgments and snap decisions and respond to stuff, and they're getting barraged with words and information and people interactions and stuff like that, they're going to get drained reasonably. That then raises their stress levels, because it's like, now I don't have the energy to be able to respond to all of this stuff, but I'm feeling the weight of all of this stuff that keeps coming at me and not being able to slow it down, or space for me to actually work out what I need to do next in a timely fashion. So, and similarly, an extrovert, if they have no avenue to be able to talk things through, they can get very muddled in their thinking, where it's just kind of like, I don't know what I think because I haven't been able to talk it out. And that causes stress, because it's like, I feel very confused and I don't know what the confusion's about, but and there's nobody here to bounce that off. And that can be really difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And so if someone was feeling quite stretched and stressed at the moment, what's a gentle first step that you would prescribe? What's something you should?
Very first gentle step would be to get people to notice what's happening in their body. So it's like, where is their tightness? Where is their tension? And are you able to do anything with that? Probably the very simplest thing that you could do to reduce stress is to actually slow down the breathing and to move from shallow breaths, which is usually one of the symptoms of being stressed, and then take big, long, deep breaths. So they talk about, there are various ways you can do it. Some people talk about box breathing, where you sort of breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in, and you sort of go in this box type of thing. But the core thing that you're trying to do with the breathing is to slow everything down, because what that does to your body is it sends your body a message to say, I can't be in that much danger if I'm able to breathe like this. So we can actually ramp down the stress response a little bit. Now, if you still have a stressful situation, that's only going to have limited impact. So you've got to be realistic about, like, well, the breathing is only going to take you so far if the stress is still present, if the things that are causing stress are still present. Or post-stress situation, the breathing can be extremely helpful.
I'm feeling very self-conscious of my breathing right now. Like, oh, how's it going? Yeah, it's good to have a check-in every so often on something so automatic. Yeah,
and it's one of those things that I think when we get task focused, we forget to breathe. I notice this in myself, where it's like I'll get really focused on something, and you're in some respects utilizing some of the positive sides of the stress response, because it's like the positive, one of the positive outcomes of stress is that you can actually get some surprising amount of things done. So it's like, okay, it's not all bad. It can be really helpful for performance to have a little measure of stress in there. One of the things that I do find, though, is that I've either breathe very, very shallowly, or I stop breathing for periods of time, because I'm just so intently focused on what it is that I'm doing that I will actually even forget to breathe. And then I'll be just like, oh, I need to take a breath now. It's just like, and it's amazing, like, when you're not getting enough oxygen in your system, your body will increase the stress response. So it's just like, we're threatening our survival here by not having enough oxygen. So let's ramp it up and see if we can get some more oxygen in the system here. And yeah, so that's just something to be aware of with the whole breathing thing. But yeah, it's the stress, the stress side of things can be a real positive.
Yeah, and I like that because a little while ago you were saying that it's generally seen as a negative thing, and society as a whole, really, we really emphasize on the positive things, and we're trying to outrun the
Yes.
negative in quotes, negative things. But yeah, tell me more about making use of stress. How do we lean into that?
That's an interesting topic.
Or is that a different chat in itself?
Well, it's not something that anyone's ever asked me before, so it's just like it's an interesting take on it. As I said just before, it's like the stress can help us to perform better. I mean, you know that butterfly feeling when you're about to perform. You're about to go out on stage, you're about to do a race, all that kind of stuff, all those feelings that are in there. That's actually partly a stress response, and those things focus some things within your body and within your mind and get you focused. And direct your energy, your physical energy and your mental emotional energy into this activity, so that you end up usually being able to perform better than you expect. So it's interesting because it can go too far, but like if the nerves get so great, you can actually stop your performance, and that's not actually what you want. But a little bit of nervous energy and a little bit of nervous tension actually can be very useful in making sure that you remember all the things that are part of getting this performance right. And it can weed out also all the distractions that might be going on around you, so that you're just like, no, I'm just, hey, I'm going to go out on stage and I'm about to sing. I'm going to remember all my words. I'm going to remember all the notes, all that kind of stuff. And that's the only thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
So rather than thinking about how many people are watching me, or what the lights are doing in my eyes, or all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, the stress can be a very helpful ally in being able to accomplish something that requires a level of precision or requires a particular outcome.
I like that, it being an ally.
Yes, and even in the times when stress is feeling like uncomfortable and awful, the stress is still trying to be an ally. It's trying to protect you, protect you from something that your body and your mind have perceived could cause you harm. So they're sort of anticipating. Now, we can override that stress response and say, oh, actually, it's okay. I'm actually perfectly safe. And self-talk can be another tool that we can put in there and say, okay, I'm assessing the situation now from this vantage point. Yes, I recognize that there's the possibility of danger, but there are all these things that are in place that are going to keep me safe, so I can keep going.
And so linking that back to our opener about stress and time perception. So the more that we make stress sort of an ally, I suppose, or just to listen to its messages, maybe our perception of time kind of changes along with that.
That's an interesting thought. I'm just reflecting on, like, I have done some performances myself, and it's interesting that when you're utilizing in a stressful situation and you're recognizing, hey, this stress is actually here to help me, I'm not sure that it changes how the time experience goes necessarily, but you come out at the end of it feeling like, oh, I feel like I've actually, you can either get a bit of a high out of it, or as a bit of relief that, oh, it's done. And maybe sometimes it can also help you to have the opposite experience of time than you thought it was going to be. Like for some performances, it's either go, oh, it's going to feel like I'm going to be out there forever and I just want to get off. And then it just turns out, well, actually, that was really quick. That really felt really quick. And or vice versa. It's like, well, I thought that this was just going to be really fast, and then it took longer than I thought, but that was okay. And I felt very relaxed in the midst of that. So
well, the next time we are both performing, we will have to observe how time is for us.
Absolutely. So yes.
Well, thank you so much for this discussion, and there'll be notes below this episode as to how you can reach Neville if you want to go further with your discussions about stress with him. Anything else you'd like to sign us off with?
I basically just want to encourage people to be self-aware, because it's like the more you know yourself, the better you understand how you work. The more tools you have to access to be able to support yourself through challenging times. I mean, we all experience stress. We're not going to get away from that. That's just the world we live in. There is going to be stress that's going to be showing up on a regular basis, and knowing how we respond to stress, and then what we can do to bring the feelings of stress down as needed, or to be able to sit with the stress until it works its way through. Knowing those things is going to be really, really helpful. So we're a very big advocate for self-awareness, and knowing ahead of time how you might be able to respond.
Wonderful. Very good homework to leave us on. Thank you.
You're very welcome.